My name is Julie Pearson, Little Thunder. Today is Monday, May 2nd, and I'm interviewing Jane Osti as part of the Oklahoma Native Artists Project, sponsored by Oklahoma Oral Histories Research Program at Oklahoma State University. We're at Jane's studio and gallery in Tahlequah. Jane, I've watched your pottery develop and refine itself over a number of years, earning you a long list of awards as well as the designation of a living treasure by Cherokee Nation. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born here in Tahlequah at the old Hastings Indian Hospital, and I grew up north of here, about 14 miles in Terraside, Rocky Ford area, and went to Oaks Mission High School.
And what did your folks do for a living?
My mom died when I was 5 years old. My dad, he did mining, and the last part of his life, for 30 or 40 years, he did ranching cattle.
Mm-hmm. Mining here in this area or
in
Arkansas?
Northeast Oklahoma.
Uh-huh. And were your grandparents a factor in your early life?
They died when I was pretty young, actually. Especially my Indian side, I think. I didn't really get to know them. They died when I was really young. And my other grandmother, she only lived till I was around 20, and I was around her quite a bit.
This was your dad's mom. Yeah. So were you around the Cherokee language much growing up?
We had Indian kids at school that we heard all the funny words, the bad words. But I really wasn't around a lot of speakers. There were a few people that I knew that spoke, but when we'd come to Tahlequah on Saturdays, we'd always hear the people around the square and around the old Cherokee courthouse. You'd hear people speaking Cherokee, and my grandma and grandpa both spoke. And so they spoke to their friends in Cherokee, the Indian side. My sister tells me these stories. I don't remember them because she used to come to town with them every Saturday, and they would meet their friends to speak Cherokee.
Okay, so she used to come to town with your mom and
with
dad.
My grandparents.
With your grandparents, okay,
Yeah.
On your mom's side.
Yeah.
What are your earliest memories of doing art?
Gosh, there wasn't any art going on in my life as a child. I think once when I was in 4th or 5th grade, I was at a school where they had an art class.
Okay.
But other than that, there wasn't any until I did it on my own.
So the one art class that you had in 4th grade, did you paint for that or draw pictures?
It was like poster paint, and I remember it was Thanksgiving, and we got to do like a pumpkin or something like that. That's my memory of art. The only art that I was around as a child was the little cards they said give you in Sunday school when you're real little. I thought they were beautiful, the beautiful colors. And that and calendars.
Were you around any Indian art?
No, my mom was the Indian person, and my parents, and she died when I was 5, and we lived with my dad's folks. So the only Indian people I was around was a couple of times a year when somebody would come visit us from my mom's family.
Right.
And the kids at school that were Indian.
Right. So you didn't really do any modeling with mud or clay that you can remember? Any three-dimensional
I made
work?
some mud pies, but that's about it.
Okay. In secondary school then, was that in Tahlequah? Let's see, what you call primary and secondary, so junior high kind of?
No, it was all in...
All at Oaks?
At that little great country school and at Oaks.
School, all together, okay.
See, we didn't even call it secondary then because we went to the 8th grade.
Right.
At the country school, and then we went to the mission school.
Right. So at the mission school, that's where you got your high school education and also were exposed to some art classes?
No.
Okay.
They had no art classes there either.
Oh. When you went on to Northeastern State University, was that immediately after high school, or did you have some work experience in between?
I worked in I think I made my art out of flower gardens and sewing and all kinds of things for years, and house fixing.
Okay, because you got married and had a family.
Yeah. And when I was 33, I started to community college in San Francisco.
Oh.
Yeah, and I went to school there for about 5 or 6 years, community college, just taking courses I wanted to take, and I would take like 5 or 6 art courses per semester. As many as I could do.
Well, let's back up a moment. So your family moved from Oklahoma to San Francisco?
No, I moved to Southern California when I was 21.
Okay.
And I lived there until I was 40.
Okay.
And when I was married there, I went to community college there. And then I moved back here in 85.
Okay.
I moved there in 67, moved back here in 85. And when I went to Northeastern, I think I was just maybe 15 hours short of my bachelor's.
I see.
And I wasn't even trying to get a degree. I'd taken everything for fun.
Okay.
So I finished that, and then I did my master's.
So the art classes that you took in San Francisco at the community college, what media were you taking classes in?
Everything. From live drawing to portrait drawing, painting, everything they offered, watercolor, anything that was on, I took everything they offered except for the clay classes.
And were you kind of thinking, I really enjoy this so much, I wish I could do this? I mean, were you thinking of yourself maybe as an artist, that might be something you would want to do?
I just knew I wanted to do it forever. I didn't think about having to make a living at that time. I just knew the first time I smelled it, so that's what I wanted to do.
You're talking about paint at this point? The smells of the painting class and stuff. That's really interesting.
But I loved the drawing, any of it. I loved all of it.
Right, right.
And I can't even think the names of the classes now. It's been so long ago, but I liked every one of them.
Yes. So, did you get any encouragement from any teachers there?
Super encouragement. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That were saying you're in the right place. You should be doing more of this.
I even loved the art history classes. I had such a wonderful teacher.
So when you came to Northeastern State University, just to, as you say, you weren't even thinking about a degree, but just taking some courses. And I read in a previous interview that you were taking an Indian Studies class, and you decided you were going to do a paper on Anna Mitchell. Had you met Anna before? And
no, that's when I was in my first pottery class also, and taking a Cherokee history class. And when I got into the pottery course, I heard of Anna, and I heard of her probably through the Indian Studies class, speaking about her and pottery. And I was also taking an archaeology class at the same time where we were talking about pottery. And it just all came together. And when I got that assignment, I called and asked if I could interview her, and that's how we got to know each other.
That's neat. Yeah, that's amazing how those three classes were converging. So your first experience with pottery, was it immediately a strong connection or not yet?
Just like the other.
Just like the other media.
Well, I had postponed taking pottery and sculpture because I wasn't interested in it. I wasn't interested in the three-dimensional. And once I got in that class, I was as addicted to it as I was to paint. And the teacher had a lot to do with it. He was a wonderful teacher.
Who was it?
Jerry Choked at NSU. He's retired now. But I don't know, he would smell the clay and talk about how wonderful it smelled and how wonderful it felt. And boy, I was right behind him thinking he's right.
So when you called Anna and you asked if you could interview her, do you kind of remember that interview? Do you remember what really struck you and stayed with you?
I was scared to death. And she was very kind. She was very stern and professional, and now she's not. But she didn't know what I wanted from her either, and I didn't know what I wanted from her either. But she's been my teacher, my mentor, my friend over 20 years now, closer to 25. And it took her 22 years to say I love you. She said it a couple of years ago. But we became friends. And
Yes.
very good friends.
So while you were talking with her, did she have pots around? And
Oh,
did
yes.
she was showing you some
I
of
was
her
in love
work,
with everything she had. Yeah.
which was very innovative at the time, right?
Well, we wouldn't have pottery in Oklahoma, and most likely we wouldn't have Cherokee potters if Anna hadn't have started doing it in the 60s. And there's a few people, I suppose, that have tried pottery, but nobody has reached the level that she did in creating the Cherokee pottery. And she didn't just do Cherokee pottery, she did anything that was Southeast, because at the time when she was doing research, we didn't have internet, and anything that was Southeastern, she would do it. It didn't have to be specifically Cherokee, and I pretty much have done that too for 20 years, but lately, the last 5 years or so, since I've met some Cherokee artists from the East and gotten acquainted with things on the internet, we can find some specifically Cherokee pots now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How neat. When did you, so in your mainstream, in your NSU pottery class, you're kind of learning the basics.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first approach Anna and ask her if you could kind of study with her?
I had seen her giving a demonstration somewhere, and I watched her do that pottery demonstration. Then I moved to the Bonita area for 1 year, and I worked with her all the time I was there, firing and making pottery and digging clay with her. So I was lucky enough to be there for 1 whole year to work with her.
Because you were actually in the same location. That was really nice, yeah. You know, you kind of had these two lines of training, I guess. You had what you'd been doing at
But
NSU.
the first training I had with Jerry Choate was really, really important. And he really instilled a love of the clay and a love of the form. And it was a real, I guess, education that I wouldn't have been ready for Anna if I hadn't have had that earlier time with him. And he was a wonderful artist. He made beautiful forms, and the way he touched the clay and sort of revered the clay was something I'll always remember about him. And I followed him around everywhere for about 3 or 4 years. I wanted to know anything he had to teach, and he was a very good, really good teacher.
Were you trying any like kind of ceramics or clay sculpture with Indian motifs or anything at NSU?
I also took his sculpture class, and the first sculpture I did was a torso, and when I got to the hand, he modeled for the hand. But it was a female sculpture. And we did a few other things. We did some busts, and then I did a sculpture that was supposed to be of Anna, but it's a tribute to Anna. It's not a portrait likeness, but it's a tribute to her. And that is at the Center for Tribal Studies. They ended up casting it in bronze. At the Cherokee Nation. I got Wilma Mankiller and Don Betts were pretty much the ones that settled the deal, although Dennis Snell was real responsible, and a lot of other people helped get it off the ground.
That's neat. That's neat. You've talked about, this kind of ancestral memory connection to clay, and was Jerry Choate wasn't working with native clays at all, was he?
No.
But Anna was.
Right.
And do you remember the first time you went to dig clay with her? Or?
In fact, Phyllis Fife, Dennis Snell, and I went to her house, and we did a video that day. And I actually didn't dig any clay that day. Watched her and Bob dig it, her husband, and we did a video that's in the library at NSU. It's very good, and they were just wonderful in showing us and telling it. Well, she went all the way through from digging to demonstrating how to make a pot to firing that day that we got on video. But yeah, they were a wonderful little couple that were real gracious and just shared everything with us.
When did you first begin then making, pots on your own and showing professionally?
I started taking classes with Jerry Cho in '87, I believe, and met Anna like that year, and did the sculpture over by '89, and I think '90 was my first year at Red Earth, and that was my first show outside of local Tahlequah. And
did you enter a competition piece?
Yes, I took the big sculpture event and I got an honorable mention.
That's wonderful.
I mean, Kelly Haney came by my booth. He really liked it.
So how did that make you feel?
Really good. It made me want to enter more shows, and then started doing Red Earth and Aspen and all those, the early Aspen shows. Remember those?
Yes.
And then started going to Wichita Art Show and Lawrence, and I think by '94 I got in the herd, in '95 in Santa Fe. I started showing in 1990.
And Santa Fe's been a pretty important market for you.
It has, and it's been a real good market for me until the last few years. And I think, the economy or something. Or I think there's just a million potters there too.
In terms of the competition aspects at Santa Fe, has that been kind of tricky because
I won an award every year I was there except one. I didn't win one in 2000.
Wow.
But I've won one every other year I've been there.
That's great.
From, sometimes it's second, third, and sometimes it's first.
Right.
But I've never won one of their big giant awards, but I've won first a few times.
In the division, that's great.
They have started a woodland division, and John Nez, he has told me it's because of one of my fish pots that I entered. He came by the booth a couple of years ago and he said, we're going to start having a woodland category. So,
oh, that's really a tribute when your stuff is so creative that they're going to.
I mean, other people might. I probably shouldn't be saying that he told me it was because of that pot. But
yeah. Oh, that's neat. What kind of reception did you get for your pots in the early days when Cherokee pottery wasn't that well known here in Oklahoma?
In Oklahoma, you still don't get much of a reaction to pottery. People think it's not art unless you can hang it on the wall and it's painting.
There's not as much appreciation for three-dimensional art.
I don't mean that people, there aren't a lot of pottery collectors in Oklahoma, I don't believe. Mm-hmm. And David Borden has one of my pots, but in general, there's not, I think it might be getting a little better known. And Anna said when she first started going to Santa Fe that people would tell her, you shouldn't be making that, Cherokees didn't make pottery.
When in fact she was reviving an old tradition. Yeah, and so there was there was Anna obviously first working, and then Bill Glass and Mike Daniels and yourself, but it's always been a small group of potters. Has that made it easier or harder to market your work?
Well, say Santa Fe, for instance, the few people that are educated and know about woodland pottery and know that it's the old pottery, or know about the mound pottery and stuff, they like collecting it. And some people just like it because of what it looks like. But, and then the ones that are there strictly for Southwest pottery, they won't even look at any other pottery. They just shoot right on by.
Kind of tunnel vision, yeah. Yeah.
So, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but then there are people that know what it is, they're very interested, but they say like 80 or 90% of the people that come to market are looking for pottery. Maybe,
oh, is that right?
Maybe 1% of them are looking for woodland pottery. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a market it's a pretty hard market.
But yeah, that's the best market we have. And when I go to a show and Midwest area here, there's not that much interest in pottery.
Mm-hmm. Midwestern United States, you're talking about. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Idlework's been pretty good, but then they get because they draw clientele from the Chicago, Milwaukee region,
Right.
all around.
From the East Coast, probably too. And Idlework's in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your early galleries in Oklahoma that you dealt with?
Well, Linda Griever at the art market, of course. She was one of my first supporters. She was very good to me. And, of course, the Cherokee gift shops have always bought from me. And several years ago, Doris Littrell, did I say her name?
Yes.
Okay. And she was kind and supported me. I haven't done much gallery work with Oklahoma. Levitt's Gallery, right now I have some work at their gallery.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, doing the shows constantly the way I was for a few years, like 8 or 10, 12 shows a year, there wasn't much left over for galleries.
Right.
But I have done like turquoise tortoise, and I can't even remember the galleries I've been in. Been quite a few at one time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was a crazy show schedule. And you can't exactly, I guess, finish things on the road like maybe a painter or a sculptor can. You have to be ready to go. How would you describe the Oklahoma Indian art market in the 80s? I think you've already kind of said.
Yeah, I pretty much didn't start until the 90s.
Okay.
I've heard it was great in the 80s.
Yeah. So you were coming in at the very beginning of the 90s.
Yeah.
What are your other impressions of that art scene, aside from the fact that two-dimensional art seemed to be what more people were looking for? They weren't as open to three-dimensional art.
Well, at the Indian art shows, I think first of all people are looking for jewelry to adorn the body, and then adorn the walls or tables. The best markets for pottery for me have been in the Southwest. At the Herd,
At the Herd show.
Pueblo Grande, and a couple of the other shows.
Right.
And then Colorado was pretty good.
Colorado Indian
At
Market.
one time.
Yeah.
I didn't do the Indian market much, but Grand Junction and Aspen, some of those shows were pretty good.
Yeah.
But, I'm trying to think of. I never really had great sales at Red Earth. Maybe it was I know Paponi does with her pottery. Maybe my pottery just didn't strike a chord with it.
Yeah, so that hasn't been one of your main shows. You've been designated a master artist by the Five Tribes Museum, haven't you? No? Oh, that's an oversight. They need to get around to that. But you were honored as a living treasure by Cherokee Nation in 2005. Right. And what has that designation meant to you?
Well, I like the group of people that I'm connected with, and in connection with being a treasure. When I first got it, I was one of the younger ones. Now there's some that are younger than me. The last few years, they've awarded to 4 or 5 people that are quite a bit younger, where at one time it was mostly elders. And the group of elders that I'm connected with, and the young ones too, I've really enjoyed the camaraderie and the get-togethers we have, and learning from them and just visiting with them. So it's made that possible, where I may not have gotten to know them if we weren't being treasures together.
Well, and also you started your gallery in 2005, and you've kind of done a lot to support their work, haven't you, through your gallery?
Yeah, they've always been welcome to show their work here, and I don't take a commission from them. What they sell is theirs, and I've enjoyed them very much. And they've told me some great stories, and we've had some good laughs.
And have they inspired any pieces?
No, not in pottery.
Uh-huh.
No, I would have all their handprints on a paint though, or several of them.
Yeah.
No, they are just real different artists. Like one of them makes buffalo grass dolls, and one does weaving and basket makers. I love and admire their work, but it really is just a million miles away from pottery.
Right, right. You've had a couple of casino commissions, as I understand it. Is that correct?
They bought quite a lot for their, well, some to exhibit and some for different rooms that they, I don't know where all they put it, but they've helped me out a lot, bought quite a bit the last 3 or 4 years.
So have they been, I was wondering if these have been more like sculptural installations, or have they been actually pots?
No, they've actually bought things I already have instead of commissioning me to make things, except, well, like the shield type things, they did order a bunch of those to put in different rooms.
Okay, the three-dimensional clay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they bought a couple of paintings, and I think they had bought a few sculptures, but it was things that I had. They didn't.
Right.
They didn't.
Not on hand.
Yeah.
That's always nice too.
Yeah.
Do you have any kids or grandkids or extended family who are interested in learning pottery?
They're all a little bit interested. And no one that's really ready to go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That may come, that may come.
I have a lot of students that have continued to make pottery. So I think at one time at the art show at the Heritage Center, there was like 8 people that entered pieces that had been through the classes.
Oh, that's a real tribute.
Yeah. And Cherokee Nation has really helped me in the respect of being able to teach a lot of people, because the last few years I worked with public schools.
Oh,
And
kind of as an artist in the schools type of
they
thing?
come to me, the teachers, I teach the teachers, and they can take it back to the school. Teachers, community members, JOM members that are interested in learning, and then they teach it in the community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So that's been a Cherokee Nation program. That's, yeah.
Yeah. And I heard that 3 or 4 schools at least, that their JOM or their program like that had gotten pottery grants this year so they could set up pottery rooms in their schools.
That's really exciting. Having a big ripple effect.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels good. You know, Anna taught her daughter, myself, and Crystal. The 3 of us continue
Crystal
to do
Hannah
pottery.
exists. Yeah.
And she taught dozens more. I just don't know who they are. But she always taught. But the 3 of us have continued to make pottery. And Victoria and Crystal are going to be teaching some classes here in our new studio too. And anyway, I was thinking about making a family tree with Anna, me, Crystal, Victoria, and then the ones we've taught, but not everybody we've taught, because obviously that would be a pretty big tree, but people that have continued to do it.
That would be
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah. I told Anna about it the other day. Make a pottery tree.
So really your mission for the gallery and studio has not just been to promote your own work. It's really been
It wouldn't be any fun
A
all by
teaching.
myself.
a teaching side.
Yes, and especially, but I've taught in here for all these years, but now the other building will enable me to get the clay dust out of the gallery part, and the new place absolutely will be a place of, I think of it as a teeny pottery institute.
That's neat.
Yeah, real teeny one, and also a good place to work.
Right.
But we will have ongoing, continual classes there, and I have Crystal and Victoria and Scott Roberts and Troy Jackson, several award-winning potters, sculptors lined up to help teach those classes.
So how has your teaching influenced your art?
Like couldn't say at this moment.
Do you ever get ideas from it, or does it
I
ever?
always learn things from the students, and there's even the little kids. I occasionally do school still, and I will almost start to correct the little kids sometimes, and they'll see what they're doing, and then I'll think, oh, I like that. I wish I'd thought of that. But anyway, there's just about always a student that will make that happen in every class. I did some teaching at Northeastern a few years ago as an adjunct in the evening, and there was never a class I taught that I didn't learn something from some students that maybe I still use right now. But I like that when that happens.
Do you use mainly native clay from Oklahoma still?
I still dig some clay, very little though, to be honest. I probably make 3 or 4 pots a year from the native clay.
And then the rest of it you...
I still teach how to, we go dig it and I teach how to process it and use it, but it's so labor intensive, and I work so many classes and everything that, and doing my own work is really time. Takes a lot of time and a lot of labor to produce it, but it's worth it when you do.
And even when you're buying clay, I guess, just the process of getting it ready is very physically demanding.
Well, the clay you buy is ready to go.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And
you're not mixing
as
it.
far as I can tell, clay you buy and clay you dig, the big difference in it is processing. You process it or somebody else processes it. And I mean, clay is still clay. It's still out of the earth. And
right.
I don't know what's added to it other than, you know, things that come out of the earth.
Right.
But,
are you mainly working with the coil?
Coil method.
Coil method.
Coil and slab. Some, you know,
Right.
flattened clay or rolled clay.
Right. It seems to me you've been working in some pretty large formats, and I guess I think I remember when I first saw your work, it was fairly long, kind of medium size, and then it's been getting to these larger formats. What are the challenges of working in those large formats?
Oh, having it hold together. Being physically lately, just being able to handle it, you know, because you handle it a lot during the making.
Right.
And I still find it really most rewarding to work large. I force myself to make little pots and medium-sized pots.
But that's not your real interest.
Not really. I would probably, if there was a market for them, make large pots all the time. So.
And they're beautiful. What about what you use to fire with? How do you?
Well, most times I use electric kiln, and then I will sawdust or wood fire to achieve the coloring, like the darkening on several of them that you can see here. But when I do the traditional clay, you know, the hand-dug clay and do traditional firing, I'll use wood to fire it. But most of the others that are double fired, they have been sawdust fired or flash fired with kindling.
That's another thing I understand, is that when you're working in these bigger, like you said, the challenge of things holding together and also making it through the firing, right? Did you ever have anything break during firing that you actually were able to use in a different way, or?
Not really.
Okay.
I've put some of them in the yard for garden arts.
Have you ever been interested in pots that are functional, or?
The first several years when I was wheel throwing, that is what I made, the wheel throwing pots.
Okay.
And we made pitchers, we made a lot of vases, but we learned to make coffee cups and pitchers and all that sort of thing.
And those I probably didn't even see, because that might have been when you first were showing it.
I didn't make a lot of those.
Yeah.
It was fun learning to make handles, though. And you can still put them on pots.
Yes, yes.
But,
I guess there's, your work has it goes in so many different veins, and one of them would be that, you've got a pot and then you've got some beautiful incise designs on it, or you're doing something very textury with it. And I was wondering if that was like an earlier form after the functional pots. Does that represent kind of what you were doing as soon as you kind of found your voice in pottery?
well, I've been studying how Cherokees made pottery and what it was used for the last several years. And this pot, for instance, this is paddle stamping from a wooden paddle. And that was the last type of pottery made in North Carolina in the east before removal. But it is 2,900 years old, the paddle stamping technique. So Cherokees were using it for a long, long time. I have 5 pots over there that represent 3,000 years of Cherokee pottery. And the first ones are kind of molded or modeled and probably stamped with a, like basket, reed or whatever. I can't think of the right word for it right now. Or textiles. And then then it comes on up through the paddle stamping. But I like knowing why things were done to pottery. And this stamping, it helped conduct the heat better for the cooking pots. And it made it easier to hold on with it slip through your hands. And then, of course, we always like things to be beautiful. So it always had, I think, a beautiful design also. But
Did you make the replica? Oh, so they really are. Are they replica?
No,
old
a
pots?
friend of mine, well, I've only known her a few years, Tammy Bean, she does museum replicas for all the museums in the Southeast.
Okay.
And I bought those from her.
Oh, wonderful.
That when they want something reproduced, not just reproduced, but replica, she does them.
She does replica, yeah. And then I guess another kind of vein of your work that's been that I love is you'll have this motif like the oak leaves or the hummingbird or the butterflies or something, but then you'll kind of replicate it around the opening of the mouth of the pot a bit, and you'll have some negative space as well as the incise designs. Can you talk about when you first started experimenting with that approach?
Actually, I think that comes way back from drawing and design classes, and this clay is now my canvas, and things that I used to do in design or classes I've transferred to doing them in clay. And I believe that I just started working with more things from nature in the last 2 or 3 years. Although the old designs they are all about nature. They're all representing wind or water or something from nature. And like the effigy pots reflect everything that was in their daily life years and years ago. Like this is a canoe pot, the fish pot, the squash pots, from food to transportation.
Right.
And nature, so it's nature's in all of them really.
It's all nature-based, yeah. And then you've got another kind of vein that I think of, which is just sometimes just a burnished pot, and we'll be looking at a couple of your pots here pretty soon. But it's just got all these beautiful like kind of bumps, and it's just, to me they feel very feminine. Like it's all about the shape of it, and it's very simple. It doesn't really have ornamentation, but the shape and the different lights, the way it catches light and stuff, is so interesting. And I'm kind of wondering whether those pots just occurred alongside these others, or whether there was a period where you were really kind of getting pretty minimal in your approach to pottery.
Are you talking about like the one here in Anderson?
Yeah.
I really, really like just shape and form without all the design and decoration. And I really, really like it, but it's really, really hard for me not to decorate every square inch.
And in terms of saleability, do people appreciate those as much?
No, they like the decorate. I think they think you did more work on them. And actually, it's harder for me to do a plain one.
Sure.
But when I took art history, I remember this term, vacuhori. And when I get going on a pot, I think I have vacuhori, fear of vacant spaces. And sometimes I don't want it to end. I just, if I can see I only have a few more inches to go, I want to keep going forever.
Do you have a favorite part of the process? Is it actually the decorating, or?
No, I actually like seeing them take shape, and then the decorating I like just as well, I guess. But I really love the pottery when it's still wet. It has, it's just been formed or just been born.
Wow.
And that's the stage I love it the most, and it seems to lose something after it dries and it hardens and something. But in that stage, I think it's when I love it the most.
Kind of like a newborn.
Yeah.
What is your creative process? Starting with how, when you get your ideas, how you get them. Take us through that process a little bit.
Well, the old pottery is pretty much the foundation of everything I do, but if I start to make a pot and I say, okay, for instance, I'm going to make a squash pot, it may not turn out to be a squash pot. It may be another pot entirely. So I just suppose I let it lead me a bit, and sometimes I force it to be what I want it to be. but it's really pretty nice when you just let the clay kind of lead you where you go. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes I think I need get a little more orderly about what I do or something. Say, okay, I'm going to make this and make it.
So do you do any sketching before you do a pot ever?
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes.
But it still might end up being something else.
Has hardly ever stayed what I sketched. But I have looked at some of the old pots and say, okay, I'm going to make a canoe pot, for instance, or a fire pot. I have one over there. I call it a fire pot. It's used to carry embers. You pretty much have to stick to your guns if you make a fire pot. Or canoe pot. I pretty much look at the old ones and stick to it. But usually they get some variation on the theme. I'm not really interested in doing replicas or reproductions, although some people might think I am because they see something and recognize it as looking like one of the old ones. But I'm not. Well, like my friend Tammy, she takes a tape measure with her, lays a penny beside it, and it's going to be as close as she can get it. Mm-hmm. I'm not after that. Mm-hmm. But I do like to experience making some of the old ones that were made before me. That's a way of just kind of paying tribute, I think, to the old ones, the old peoples.
Yeah. So what's your creative routine, especially when you're both teaching and making work? Is it just depend from day to day, or do you try to get a certain number of hours in the studio? Or
I might be working at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, but it's always on the other side of sleep. I don't work late into the night as a rule.
Okay, so it's always before or after you slept.
I wake up early. Yeah, I like the early morning hours for working. And I usually, while I'm quiet in the morning, things come to me that I might want to do. Mm-hmm. There's not any noise around or nobody awake usually. Right. And that's my time to, I think I'll, that's when I guess the muse comes.
Yes. Yes.
Or the muse. Or the moose.
What do you think was, looking back on your career so far, different points you'll come to kind of forks in the road and you'll go one way as opposed to another. What do you think was one of the important forks in your career?
Gosh. Well, I can't think of anything major. Well, from going to school to going to shows,
Mm-hmm.
and I pretty much continued, going to school and then doing the shows and working for years and years, and then teaching. That's been the phases. Right now is a big teaching phase, but
It feels like a continuum.
mm, there hasn't really been in my work there hadn't been anything real big. I don't believe that's taken me in different directions. Every few years I feel like I have to kind of reinvent myself because I would get bored making the same thing for 20 years. So maybe if you mean that kind of
Mm-hmm. So you'll try
turning places. I think meeting with the Cherokee, North Carolina artists, the group back there was a big turning point for Oklahoma pottery.
And when did that happen?
2005. That's why I must have moved here in 2004. They came here and taught us in 2005 the paddle stamping technique. And Tammy being the one that did the replicas, she came with them. And she's the one that had taught them. They had lost it for over 100 years. And she taught them in 2000, I think, and then they came to teach us in 2005. That was quite a turning point as it allowed us to find out more about what Cherokee pottery really was, and instead of just southeastern pottery.
Who all was at the workshop with you that they taught? Were any of the other, like Anna?
Bill
or
came.
Bill? Uh-huh.
Anna came to visit, and when Anna saw what they were teaching us, she said, "I wish I would have known this 30 years ago." And Bill came. He observed, but he did his own thing. And I think most of the people that participated, there was about 12. Most of them were students that I was having in class, except for Bill, and we invited him to come. And just anyone that was working in clay that I knew of, we invited them to participate. And that was a pretty big turning point for us, I think. I think I kind of got lost in it for a while trying to do what they did, and it took a year, 3 or 4 years before I came back to do what I do and incorporate what I learned from them instead of trying to be them.
Right, right. It sounds like, just the community of artists that you show with has been really important to you. In what ways?
Well, they've been like extended family. You go to a show and there's always someone to help you out, whether it be loading, unloading.
Which is a big job for potters.
And I remember one time I was just smothering and Tiller Wesley brings me a bottle of water, we just all helped each other out on the road, I think, sometime or another, and that you maybe have a booth neighbor in Colorado, and then you may see them all the way across the country, and you're friends and like family the next time you're together. And I think it's been a really wonderful opportunity to meet people from other tribes and get to know them a little bit. Because I've had everyone from people in Montana that I'd never even heard of their tribe before that became friends with, and anyway, that's been really neat. And then our immediate family of friends, like there's been times when I've had people, cover, even my room or help me with gas in the beginning, So that family of friends have been real important.
What about business? The business part of art is just, I think, for many artists, like the hardest part to get. And what were some of your, I guess, best learning experiences or challenges?
Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm much of a business person, and if I would have had a business manager, I might have done a lot better. Or secretary or something. So all of the business parts a challenge, I guess, most of it. And people are lucky when they have partners with them that take care of that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
how about even pricing your work?
That's been tricky too over the years to know. And when before the economy kind of went crashing, I pretty much had a handle on, I guess, the price that should be, because it was selling pretty much. But I don't know what to put on it right now. Anyway.
Yeah, and the bigger pieces, which take so much effort and time, and which basically have taken your whole lifetime to do. When people say, how long did it take you to do this?
That's everybody's favorite question.
What has been one of the low points in your career?
I suppose about in the 6-8 years after I started, just not being able to make a living doing what I really love to do. I felt like quitting a couple of times. And my good friend Robert Conley, I was having a discussion with him once, and he proceeded to explain success to me. He said, success is not financial, not always just financial, and he just really helped me look at it a little different about, okay, if I can tough it out and this is what I want to do, that would be success. And it's been tough, there have been tough financial times with it. I don't think I've ever had a tough time about, having the passion for the work and wanting to do the work. But, so it's never really, it's never really gone down at all. I would work every day if I could. If life didn't interfere, I really would. But every once in a while you have family and life that happens.
Jojo keep wishing someone would take care of all that other stuff, the life stuff, so she could just do the painting. How about one of the high points in your career? An award, or not necessarily, maybe just an experience with an artist or a collector.
There's been so many of those, I have a hard time thinking of one. There's been many wonderful collectors that have in awards that have been really good.
What do you think has been one of the more important awards that you've received, and why?
Gosh, I don't know about the awards. I think David Boren was one of the people I enjoyed most buying a pot, because he invited me to his house to bring it to him and took me on a tour.
The one in Santa Fe?
No, the one across from OU campus when he was. Anyway, he showed me his whole art collection, and then he sent me over to the museum with Mary Jo Watson to see the Spyro collection. Anyway, he was one of the most enjoyable sales I ever made, delivering it and visiting with him. I had 2 or 3 good collectors that have been wonderful to me. But, 4 or 5 that are really friends and collectors. So all of them, I won't mention their names, they've all been high points.
Yeah, and they do become, like you said, good friends.
There's one in Dallas, one in a couple in Arkansas. And Mel Pearlman, that has done so much for the OOHRP Museum, he was the first person that bought several $1,000s worth from me that I thought, oh my God.
I can make a living doing this.
So there's been, and then my one collector in Arkansas, he's just been so good to me. And he probably has 20, 30 pieces, and one Dallas does too.
And do they sometimes, like if you find a good reception for something that you're just experimenting with, you're not sure how it's going to go, what is that response from the collector?
The collectors I've just talked about, well, they come and go. They fade away. They get 20 or 30 pots, then you don't have the same collector anymore. But they pretty much bought the same type of things through the years. And I've made some odd different things that have sold, but they pretty much like the traditional pottery, those major collectors.
In terms of what the tribes are, the involvement of the tribes with tribal artists right now, have you seen some positive changes? Is there more that needs to be done, do you think?
I think the last several years, the tribe has allocated, I believe, 1% of casino sales to buy art with, and that has helped a lot of artists. I hope it's spread out to a lot of them, but I know it's helped a whole lot of artists, and maybe they could do more. For instance, with the elders, I think they could buy more of their art to help sustain them through some pretty rough fixed incomes and some hard times.
Right.
So, and maybe they will. Maybe they just need to be made aware of them. But I try my best to make them aware of it.
What's the next show you have planned for your gallery?
We'll be having a grand opening for our new studio classroom this month, the 13th. And then probably not anything until homecoming on Labor Day for the studio. I'll be going to Santa Fe, hopefully, in August. But as soon as I get back from that, we always have a homecoming show during the Cherokee holiday. So,
is that a pretty good time for you?
It's a busy time, and as far as sales, it can go either way, but it's a real busy time for people that are Cherokee to come back and visit Oklahoma and visit their friends and relatives.
Right.
And we have a lot of art shows, 3 art shows going on that weekend.
Wow. You mean 3 at your studio?
Well, one at the museum, and one at the armory, and one here, and maybe at other places too. There's 3 that I'm involved with.
Right. How many pieces, just thinking about getting ready for Santa Fe, which, as I understand, that's the main big show that you do nowadays, is Santa Fe Indian Market. So how many pieces typically do you try to
Well, the pots, probably 10, 15. And I used to do a lot of the smaller wall hangings. And I used to take as many as 30 or 40 wall hangings in addition to 10 to 15 pots.
That's a lot.
And I think only one time I came close to selling all the pots. But and I usually bring quite a few of them back with me. But that's okay.
Yes.
I had 3 shows
Then
as
you
soon
have
as
that-
I get back.
Exactly, then you have that work ready. It's sometimes hard for artists to keep very much work, but you've been able to keep a few things, I take it, over.
Not much, just
Not
broken
much.
things.
Yeah, and what do you call your wall again?
Intensive care unit.
Your intensive care unit.
They all have a crack or a break. Broken shoulders. Broken lips.
So, is there anything that we've forgotten to talk about, or anything that you'd like to add?
I can't think of anything, Julie, except you're a good interviewer. You made me very comfortable. Thank you.
Well, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of your work now.
Okay.
Okay, you want to tell us a little bit about this pot?
Okay, this is called a Canoe Pot. It's Middle Mississippian type pottery that was made around 1300 probably. I don't have my information in front of me, but it's an effigy form. It represents a canoe.
Yeah, and so an effigy pot is?
A representation, and we had a lot of them that represented food and animals, and then in this case a canoe. And I first made this pot about 8 years ago, the first time, the only other time I made it, and I met Lloyd Keevanue.
Who was the director of the IAIA.
Yeah, and it was just a few months, I think, before he passed, but anyway, I liked him a whole lot, and I gave him the first canoe pot I ever made.
Wow.
And, that was a nice experience. He told me a lot about the mountains that I didn't know.
And this would be one that has gone through 2 firings, is that right? To get,
it was kiln fired and then sawdust fired.
Right, to get that beautiful color.
And the little nodes going around there are real representative of that period. That I don't know what they meant, but a lot of the pots had nodes, and I think it probably helped hang on to them or decorative, probably a little bit of each.
Mm-hmm. That's neat. And I'm going to try to zoom in on the top of the pot a little bit more too, just to get the look at the.
Yeah, this pot is called a Burr Pod, or I've also seen it in museums where it's called a fire pot. Was used to carry embers for the fire. And that's why it has handles, and I imagine the little burrs and nodes on it kept it from slipping and probably helped conduct the heat to keep the heat going. Some of them had the little nodes all over them. So anyway, I think I like the design and shape of it, although it was a functional pot. But I think it had a very important mission to carry embers to keep the fire alive.
Right. So part of that ceremonial, keeping the same fire, keeping the fire alive. So in terms of the color, when this was fired, double fired, what did you use?
I do a lot of sawdust firing, so I would say it probably is sawdust, but this was a white clay, so it doesn't go the dark color, or it could go black, just depending on how much fuel you use and how well you cover it.
I see.
It's probably exposed to a lot of air to go the gray color.
Yeah, it's got a nice gray color. Okay, you want to tell us about these 2 pots?
Okay, the orb with the butterflies, that's more of a sculptural piece than it is a pot. It doesn't have an opening, but the butterflies, of course, from nature, and the designs surrounding them are from the foundation of it is from the old pottery. And it's just a way to be creative and not make the usual pot.
Right.
Do a little something different with it.
Did you you can really see the dimensionality of it, that there's an outer layer and then these inner layers. So was it a matter of just, you weren't adding anything to the coils after you were done, you were just taking away on the...
After it was smoothed
right.
and finished up smooth, then I started carving into it, and drawing and carving into it.
What do you use for your carving?
Chopstick I use a lot for drawing. And I'll just use something to pull the clay out, just a tool, either wood or metal, usually wooden tools I like. And a lot of it's pushed away rather than cut away.
Okay, and then the pot on the left.
Okay, that is on the Southwest they call them melon pots all the time, but I call them squash pots because most of our old images look more like squash and pumpkin and that family to me than it did the melons. Anyway, once again, it's an effigy, a representation of the plant, and plants were important. A plant that was a very important food source, one of the three sisters, the bean squash.
Right. And you want to explain the significance of Three Sisters? Donald Van talked about that too.
Well, corn, bean, and squash. The corn provided the stalk for the beans to wrap around to, and the squash, the leaves from the squash provided the shade to do the weeding, and the beans also replenished the soil with nitrogen, and then we had something good to eat with it, and we don't ever have agriculture without pottery, so they go hand in hand, and wherever people make pottery, they have agriculture, and it's usually discovered simultaneously, whether it's along the Nile or the Rio Grande or the Mississippi. That one is a large cooking pot with a Cherokee stamp on the bottom that Mooney took pictures of people using that particular stamp in the early 1900s. But the top is with the banded top and the notched rim. It's typical overhill Cherokee pottery. I guess over the hill meant over the mountain into Tennessee. But that is
And the paddle motifs that you were talking about are some of the things that...
The paddle design on that one is a version of the friendship pattern, which was taken from basket work and added to pottery, since we're always basket makers, usually before potters, because we're hunters and gatherers before we're agricultural. But a big pot like this, this is quite a large pot, but some of our pots held 5 to 10 gallon, because I guess they were used for very big feast occasions.
Is that right?
So that one may be a 4 gallon one.
So the fire, that must have been an amazing technique that they had for firing something that big.
I've seen some of them in the museums. They're wonderful. Some of them this tall.
That's incredible.
I've tried to make a few of them that tall.
Well, Jane, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been wonderful seeing your work again.
Thank you. Thank you.